Avengers! Assemble.
Hello everyone and welcome back to Excelsior, the world's #1 Marvel's Avengers podcast and a seasonal Spider-Man review podcast as well. I'm your director, Christian Buckley, joined as always by the Apex legend, Jack Martin.
Excelsior. You mess with one of us, you mess with all of us. I'm so excited to talk about Spider-Man 1 later, dude. So good.
I'm so excited to talk about Sam Raimi's Spider-Man 1, a movie that we both grew up with.
A true masterpiece.
Product of its time, potentially.
Oh, yeah.
But boy, is it a fun movie to watch. And I bet it'll be a fun movie to talk about, too. And I almost said unfortunately, because, listen, I know we're excited to talk about that movie. There is a good amount of Marvel stuff going on this week that we got to get through first. Be it this wonderful game, Marvel's Avengers, alongside some news of MCU TV, MCU projects as a whole, and What If? What If is over, so we got a lot to talk about this week. But I guess starting out, I want to ask you point blank, did you play any Marvel's Avengers over the last week with the quadruple XP weekend with any incentives? Did you play the game at all?
I did. It feels
Hell
like it's
yeah.
been forever, but I was mostly playing as Thor, doing some villain sectors every once in a while and some hives here and there, just trying to get my gear score up to 150. I think I'm in the 130s right now. I'm just at that point where I'm waiting for the actual 130 gear drops to occur. It hasn't happened yet. But I'm hovering, my gear is all at 129 and I'm just waiting for the 130s to drop.
Yeah, I can understand that. It's definitely a gear grind that will be fixed hopefully soon. But yeah, I was in there too. I was working on T'Challa. I wanted to try and get him some good levels. I wanted to take advantage of the fact that it's an XP weekend, right? I considered playing Black Widow, maybe to get her closer to 150 because she's only a 105 gear score for me. But then I was like, well, if I'm playing the game right now, it's been 3 weeks. I don't want to be not taking advantage of the XP multiplier. So I spent a lot of time with Black Panther, Hulk, because I never maxed out Hulk even to the level cap, and Kamala as well. So it was nice to get back in, though. Just get in there. I feel like I'm better with Black Panther now than I was during the expansion. But
yeah, I feel like he's definitely a character that takes a while to understand, and that was sort of my issue with playing as him for the expansion. But I feel like if you get him, he's probably a really good character to have. I just still haven't quite grasped his character.
Yeah, I think the problem was because I ended up running through War for Wakanda with one of my friends who likes the game but hasn't played it at all this year. I think the issue was they introduced T'Challa, who's a very technical character with this expansion, right? And then they also introduce these brand new enemy types that are very specific on how you have to take them down. And it's so can only T'Challa do this well? Is it anybody? It's a lot to juggle. And he's already a technical character like we've talked about. So being separated from that, I enjoyed him a lot more. So.
Yeah, that's a good point. I feel like playing as him and going up against the normie enemies that we've faced for over a year, it's definitely a little bit easier to understand.
Definitely. Well, what's easy to understand this week, Jack, is that there's really not much else going on in Avengers at the moment, but there is a lot to talk about. First, why don't we run through the marketplace, the featured items for the week. A lot of same old, same old. There's a lot of bundles in the shop right now. The two featured MCU skins are Infinity War Cap and Black Panther. And we also got a new look at some Team outfits in the War Table blog this week. Do you have opinions on them?
Yeah, so these are the Allies of Wakanda outfit bundle. Not the, I think, outfit bundle we were hoping for. I think you
Correct.
postulated a while ago. It was more like we were thinking of like actual vibranium outfits for all of our heroes, but this is more, I guess, Wakandan themed, where it's like a black, purple, and gold sort of theme for all the outfits. And I think this is like the least offensive outfit bundle that's been released for the characters. Some of them are better than others, as always, but I like the matching here of the black, purple, and gold. I think Cap has probably the best one. But yeah, I feel like this is a fairly solid outfit bundle. What about you?
I agree, and it's another one similar to the Red Room Takeover that I wish was earnable, because it's cool, it's synergy with something new that came to the game, and despite what Updates says this week, we still don't have earnable cosmetics really in a genuine progression sort of way. They did clarify that it's coming along well. It's on the roadmap to hit this year, so maybe, just maybe, some of the cool themed sets like the Red Room one or this Wakandan one will eventually come into the fold as earnable skins. But yeah, I won't hold my breath. It does look cool though. I'm bummed that I would have to spend money on it because I do like it.
Yeah, I wonder if in the future they do like, hey, for this week you can earn this outfit bundle, and like you have to like grind and do these challenges to do that. I wonder if that's what they're doing. I'm sure it'll definitely be more like one-offs, but I think it could potentially be a good idea to recycle these bundles. Like, I don't know how many people are buying all these skins. Like, maybe recycle these for like an event and just be like, hey, you can earn these by doing X challenges with your heroes.
Jack, I would be surprised because a couple days ago, I was scrolling on the subreddit and somebody was talking about the outfits or cosmetics. And one of the replies I saw towards the top was like, as someone who spent hundreds of dollars on this game.
Wow.
And I was like, I literally like had to put my phone down and read it again. I was like, excuse, hundreds? Multiple hundred? That's, I mean, it's $15 for a skin, right? So that could rack up fast. But like, who's buying all that stuff? Like, like, who's buying everything?
I don't think there's hundreds of dollars worth of good skins in this game.
Oh, no,
so I feel bad for that person.
Yeah, so I'm very, very curious. Agents of Excelsior, if you're listening, if you are someone who has spent at least retail price of this game on skins, not like earned currency, like in addition to the currency you earn in the game, because you can earn like, if you're smart about it, you can earn like what, $60-$70 worth of credits from maxing out the challenge cards.
Something
of
like
how many
that,
characters there are. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
If you've put in $60 of your real, well, money's not real, but like the real actual credit card money, please let me know, because I'm very curious. And what did you buy? Because I made the mistake of spending like $300 on a takedown on Thor a couple weeks ago, and if I had that with me right now, I'd be able to buy the Iron Man skin. So I'm playing it safe now. No risk.
Gotta play it safe, man. Gotta play it safe. You never know what's coming next.
No, yeah, because then who's to say that as soon as I buy that Iron Man one, they're like, hey, Thor Ragnarok is in the shop now. It's like, great. Now they got my credit card. Perfect. Yep. Oh, man.
Yeah, gotta save those credits, man.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Can't be impulsive.
No.
Well, that's really it for Avengers this week, honestly. There is some interesting stuff going on around the game at the moment. So why don't we get into some stark realities? We had this conversation last week when it was announced that Avengers is coming to Xbox Game Pass. Well, it's been out there for about a week now. We had our XP boosted weekend. We had the entire Game Pass audience able to download and play this game on a variety of consoles and PCs and platforms. We had an update via Benji Sales on Twitter, who, if you are interested in games and you don't follow him, highly recommended. He gives out like periodical updates on just sort of layman's terms of how games are doing sales wise, how performance is doing for certain studios. Like, he's very insightful and I recommend following. Um, a couple days ago, he said Avengers is the 10th most played game on Game Pass, which is impressive, right? Like, showing up and climbing the ranks, it's a big name game. It's a pretty big, like, IP you're dealing with. And just recently, I believe this morning or late last night, he tweeted out that Avengers is now the 5th most played game on Xbox Game Pass. It's only behind Minecraft, Forza Horizon 4, and FIFA. And I believe there's one other one, but that's pretty impressive.
The other one is the Xbox One version of FIFA.
Oh,
There's
of
two
course.
FIFAs.
Of course.
Yeah.
That's wild.
Yeah, so like disregarding the FIFA duplicate, this is in the top 4. And I think there are, I would say, hundreds of games on Game Pass. Like, I think there's that many. So
yeah.
for this game to come in like very fresh and just already climb to the top is really great. And like I think a lot of that is because of the newness of it, but I mean, it shows people are really interested in it. This could have come out on Game Pass and people heard about the game and just being like, I don't know, it doesn't seem worth it. But to have a bunch of people play it and be one of the most popular games on Game Pass, that's awesome. And I've just having that game on that service is really good for the future of the game that we've talked about last week. So this is good stuff. I'm really happy for that game.
Yeah, dude, it's very, it's heartwarming, honestly, because people, I think, rightfully were hesitant with this game, but you and I were both sold on it the second we actually played it, and I think there were a lot of people who probably didn't even give the beta the time of day last year, and being able to get into it after a year beyond the beta and launch in terms of technical fixes and improvements and streamlining the UI and stuff like that, new characters, more content, having your first impression of this game be essentially free through this service and seeing the way the game functions today, how fun combat is, just everything Crystal's done to make this game what it is a year out from launch, like, I think it's very easy for this game to probably sell itself to people now if they have Game Pass, you know, like getting it on the sticks and seeing how it feels and running the campaign. Like, the campaign and characters speak for themselves, I think, but actually getting your hands on it, I've seen at least a lot of positive feedback on social media, people being like, wow, I was really surprised, or I'm very impressed, or I did not expect to be enjoying the game this much. So I'm sure Crystal's very happy with this. I have to wonder what Square Enix feels, because there was that weird drama with Outriders, remember? It was like the talk of the town. It was blowing up everywhere. And then a couple months later, the devs were like, hey, we didn't really get any money from Square for this game after it came out. So very curious to see how Square Enix feels about this, considering they are the ones that have been kind of disappointed with the performance so far. But Crystal's always been very, very happy with how the game does, and I'm sure this is just another W on the board for them.
Yeah, totally. I think Game Pass is the future for this game, quite honestly. I think for a while this game's kind of been a tough sell for people for that $60 price point. When it got knocked down to $30, it got easier, but still there was that barrier. But like, for all intents and purposes, this is free, or $1 or $15, depending on like the subscription that you're at. So this is a really great way to just have people who are slightly interested jump in and get sold by it or not, and then they're not burned by it and they go their way, or they keep playing the game as free content comes out. And that's the best part, is everything about this game on Xbox is completely free. There's the game itself and any DLC that comes along with it in the future. So I feel like even if people don't love it on Game Pass, they're still going to appreciate it being a free experience at the end of the day. And that's awesome.
Yeah, plus we don't know how long it's going to be on Game Pass. Things have been on there for either a couple years, a single year since Game Pass started, depending on who the publisher is. We know that Crystal is very friendly with Microsoft right now, so who's to say how long this game is going to be on there? I'd say the safe bet is at least a year, but like you just said, if people aren't in love with it, but they're Marvel fans, if you have the Series X, maybe keep it installed. If you have the Series S, maybe you install it every time there's a new character, but like the writing, the set pieces, I think are good enough to get people coming back, especially if it's a low stake investment, which through Game Pass it is for a lot of people. So like you said, I think the future of this game kind of lives with this decision and the audience that they're growing on Xbox right now.
Yeah, so I was thinking about that, like how long will this game actually stay? I would hope it just kind of runs the course and stays with Game Pass as long as this game is supported. I don't really, I have no clue about like the inner workings of like the relationships of how games get on Game Pass and how long they stay there. This was on PS Now for what felt like a week, but it was probably like a couple months and then just disappeared. So I hope that is not the reality for this game. I think you're probably right, like at least a year, you would hope. But I do hope that as long as this game is supported, this game just is on Game Pass, because I think that's great for Game Pass, as this has shown. It's also really great for the game.
Yeah, and just a little bit of insight. I think Avengers was up for about 2 months, but when it comes to PlayStation Now, like they just announced The Last of Us Part 2 is going to be on PS Now, and that leaves in January. So like even their own things they want to prioritize on there don't stay on there long. So like I don't know why they put Avengers on PS Now. I don't think that helped the game at all. But like Final Fantasy 15 is a Square Enix title that was on Game Pass. I think it left late last year, but it was on Game Pass since I think Game Pass like became a thing. So Square is no stranger to keeping a game on there for a long time. I'm curious how long Outriders is going to be there, because that came out launch day Q1 and it's still up. So yeah, I think you're right. I think the smart move is probably to keep it on there until the game ends its support, or if they want to release a paid expansion, then the paid expansion's not on there. But I think Xbox and Avengers will go hand in hand for the near to far future, and it's very funny that Spider-Man is not for this audience.
I would love, not love, I would think it's hilarious if this follows like the Destiny route and is on Game Pass, and if they, like what you said, end up doing paid expansions, they're completely free via Game Pass. And PlayStation players have to pay for them. I think that would be ridiculously hilarious.
Yeah, that's the price you pay for getting Spider-Man.
Yeah. I think I could be wrong, but I think I was reading from Paul Tassi that that Sony had like a exclusive window of content for the game that expires this year. So like I'm not saying that like Xbox is going to get exclusive content, but like I think it's completely possible if they do end up doing paid expansions that Game Pass just gets those for free. I think that'd be hilarious.
Yeah, dude. X-Men, Xbox, Wolverine.
Yep.
Because we all know there's that weird layers and layers and tangled up mess that is the Spider-Man rights, and PlayStation and Sony kind of own part of it. So like they definitely don't own Wolverine in any way, shape, or form. So I know they got that exclusive game. It's way less complicated. Wolverine could show up in this game on Xbox. That is absolutely a fact.
Yeah, I mean, Wolverine's showing up in Midnight Suns, so I feel like that character is a little bit more open to to usage across different games.
Jack, I also heard a rumor very, very recently that is not on the dock, but it's something I just thought of. Xbox, very, very great about backwards compatibility and supporting older stuff. Apparently, one of the titles that is due to get back compat support imminently is X-Men Origins Wolverine.
Ooh, I hear people love that game.
Yeah, I always wanted to play it, so if I can get it digitally, I'm in because I got my S. But if it's physical, that is a nice solid weekend for you right there.
Yeah. Dude, so. I'm so sad. The first thing I tried to do, well, when I got my Series X, immediately I was like, let me play old games that I just have. The first game I tried to put in was Spider-Man 2 from the original Xbox, and it is not supported. Very sad about that. It was supported on the 360, and I just assumed that would just carry over, but I guess not. It's very sad.
Yeah, that is a bummer, but I'm curious if the old Harry Potter games work.
Ooh, I will see about that, because I loved Chamber of Secrets.
Oh yeah, great game. Well, that's basically it, actually, for Marvel's Avengers this week. So why don't we move on to other ongoings in the Marvel universe? Because meanwhile, Jack, we got... Why don't we start with this? We did our breakout review for Venom: Let There Be Carnage earlier this week. That is up everywhere you normally consume Excelsior episodes. I guess very, very spoiler-free, the spoilerist of freest thoughts you can send out there. For listeners who haven't heard it yet, what did you think of Venom 2?
Didn't like it, but I think it's more fun than the original. So if you enjoyed Venom, you're going to love the second one. If you didn't enjoy Venom, you're probably not going to like this one, but it's at least more of a watchable movie, in my opinion. What about you?
Yeah, I had a blast with it. I greatly enjoy Venom 1, and Venom 2 was more to love. It was just more Venom, and I had a blast with it. Do you think it's a movie that is worthy of a $90 million opening weekend? Because that's what we're looking at right now.
Well, apparently it is. I can't speak to quality and how that nets out to money, because a lot of great things don't get money, but a lot of bad things end up making a lot of money. So apparently this is worth $90 million.
Would Martin Scorsese say that this film is cinema?
Absolutely not. But would he say that Avengers Endgame is cinema? Absolutely not.
I think there's a weird world where he maybe sees it and he's like, they had ideas, and he respects it more than he respects other Marvel stuff. Because they flex with some weird concepts, you know.
Sure, I guess I'd be interested in hearing his thoughts, but I would bet it's the exact same.
No, you're probably right.
Venom. Oh, is that a DC movie? It's like, great, thanks, appreciate you, Martin.
Mm-hmm. Well, we got another thing that popped up recently, but has since been quelled, but worthy of bringing up because you might have heard that Blade, starring Mahershala Ali, would have been releasing in October of 2022, according to a tweet. And I know what you're thinking. Jack, what are they thinking?
Isn't that supposed to be a Phase 5 movie?
It is. So is Phase 5 starting next year?
No, certainly not. This was a big mistake.
Yeah. How you messed that up?
I don't know. It was like a well-produced graphic from Marvel India, I believe, on Twitter. And it listed Blade coming out October 2022. And it was up for a while, and news spread. And I was very confused about this because it was, I believe, announced in 2019 during the whole basically Phase 4 announcement with WandaVision and things like that. And they announced Blade with Mahershala Ali, and Kevin Feige was like, this is going to be a Phase 5 movie. And I believe he said the first Phase 5 movie. But regardless, this was not going to be a movie that's soon. I actually don't even think this is filming yet. I'm pretty sure production of this movie is starting next year. It was supposed to start like at the end of this year. So that had me incredibly confused. Like, how can this come out in October of next year? Filming hasn't even begun. And it just happened to be a mistake. So this being a Phase 5 movie, it is probably a 2023, 2024 movie, I would say.
Yeah, I think you and I slotted it in a similar spot when we did our predictions for those release dates that were announced a couple weeks ago. Remember, we were like mid-recording and then they announced a bunch of release dates.
Yes.
I think we said the October 2023 movie would have been Blade.
Yeah.
So, yeah, makes sense. Exciting times.
Really quick, back to Venom, if you'll allow me.
Mm-hmm.
There's a news story from IGN regarding the original title for Venom 2. Did you see this?
I did not.
So Andy Serkis said there is a moment that for like a little bit, Venom 2 was called Venom Love Will Tear Us Apart.
I wish they committed to that.
I that is a much better title to the events of what happened, without spoiling it, of Venom Let There Be Carnage than that title is. Because that title does not live up to the title.
Yeah. Yeah, you're correct.
Love Will Tear Us Apart, like, is a rom-com title, and that's what the movie is.
Mm-hmm.
So,
and it's great because, you know, like every time a symbiote separates from a person, it's very violent. It's literally tearing the two entities apart. So, like, that, it's pretty good. It's a pretty good title, Andy. You should have stuck with that.
It's very accurate. I don't think it would have the same box office ramifications, and that is probably why they chose to change that. But I think that's really funny.
The third Venom should be called, I saw people say Venom but the E is a 3.
Mm-hmm.
But you know how the V in Venom looks kind of like a check mark?
Yeah.
It should be like a play on those, like, will you be my girlfriend? Yes, no, check which one. And that should be the title of the Venom 3. Spider-Man, will you be my new host? And get the V worked in there with one of the checks.
What about Them&M?
Ooh.
With a 3.
That's good. No, that will be saved for when Eminem appears in the film, performing his third song for Venom. And he won't be called Eminem in universe. He will be called Venom. Whatever he said.
Them&M. But it is just him with a symbiote in that nightclub doing his rap.
Oh, boy.
There you go. $1 million idea. $1 billion idea, actually. This movie, I mean, this might make $1 billion.
I think it will. Venom 1, did Venom 1 crack a bill?
800 million.
This will. This will do it.
There. I mean, yeah, like it beat the opening weekend, which is wild. I'm still flabbergasted by that. It beat the, I think Joker still has the October opening weekend record.
Yeah, because Venom created the record, and then Joker took it, and I don't think Venom 2 took it back.
I think you're right.
But I think this weekend will probably be very strong also, because Venom 1, from what I remember, had very surprisingly good legs at the box office, and there's not much else coming out anytime soon that I can think of. Like, Dune is not going to be a smash hit at the box office, and neither is the new Bond, I don't think. But Venom,
Dune's doing well. Dune made like $100 million internationally.
Yeah, okay. I just mean like Americans and Dune. Like I don't know.
Maybe.
How many people are gonna
I don't think it'll be Venom Let There Be Carnage.
No.
It'll do
in the U.S., we only care about the spandex, you know.
True. I'm reading Dune actually right now.
Oh, interesting. I want to see it. I'm excited for that. I love Denis Villeneuve.
So. Oh yeah, he's a great director. Love Prisoners. That's my favorite of his. I'm seeing that movie with our friend Mike Connors at a 75-foot screen in New York City.
Ooh,
Like
that's fantastic.
75-foot tall, like IMAX screen. Very excited.
That sounds wonderful.
Yeah, that'll be a good time.
Hell yeah. You know what else is going to be a good time?
What's that?
When we see each and every of the 31 upcoming MCU projects that are now in development.
Oh man, we gotta have a conversation at some point about too many MCU things. Aren't there like 10 movies this year? Movies and TV shows? In
I think
2021 alone?
I think it would have been 10 if Ms. Marvel didn't get delayed.
Right, yeah. Jesus.
Yeah, and I'm with you because I don't think even if we did get 10 a year, which Jesus Christ, I still don't know if it would hit saturation because the way they space out similar projects. If you like, I think Phase 4 specifically, like, things have all been weird, yeah, but like WandaVision and Loki were very different tones, and Falcon was also, and then Shang-Chi and Eternals. So like, the fact that at this point in time, Marvel Studios has been able to diversify each project pretty significantly in terms of like the genre or tone it's going for, I feel like it'll hard to get burnout, but I'm with you. I think they should have some self-control.
Yeah, and I think I think you're right about like the diversity of each project. But also I feel like we were in such a like rut of Marvel productions that we were so hungry. This year especially, but man, I don't know if I could keep, like, I will, but I don't know if I would like feel sustained with like 10 MCU projects a year. That's a lot. Like, I loved the seasonal like the 3 movies a year that we used to get. That was great. 10, and like you gotta imagine not all of these are gonna be hits. I mean, we're sitting on in my opinion, not the one of the lower MCU projects that we'll talk about soon, but man, I think we're gonna get some stinkers along the way. If there's 31 of these, I can't imagine all of them are gonna be good.
Yeah, and I mean, even some of the ones that when we heard of the name of it, I had zero knowledge of whatever character it's being based off of, so I'm just like not excited because I don't know anything. Like, I think a while back they were like, "Oh yeah, one of our shows is going to be is about the character Echo, and it spins off of Hawkeye." And it was like, okay, I've never heard that name in my entire life. I don't know what is it going to be like Hawkeye again. And then earlier this week, there's rumors that the entire Daredevil cast is going to be in that show. So like, why is that not just going to be a Daredevil project? Like. You're getting me interested in it now, but it's gonna be very weird. And like, She-Hulk is doing the same sort of thing, but with Bruce Banner. So like, She-Hulk I think is more well known. I'm a fan of She-Hulk, so like obviously I'm already excited for that. And Tatiana Maslany is an amazing actor, so like there's reasons to be excited for that project. But yeah, it feels like maybe like Spider-Man Homecoming style. They feel the need to like assure a success by tying it to something we already know. And I wonder if that could be a pitfall.
Yeah, I don't know. I guess like they haven't let us down yet, but I guess we'll have to wait and see.
For sure. Well, the thing that is running around in the headlines at the moment comes from Variety. Their sources are telling them that currently in development, presumably one of these 31 projects, is a Agatha Harkness WandaVision spinoff starring Kathryn Hahn returning as Agatha. It's going to be a dark comedy.
This should be a fun one. This should be a really, really fun one. I'm glad, like, it seems that they were saving her at the end of WandaVision for something later, and it turns out that's what this is. So she was a fun character. I think the final episode of that show is not too good, but her work throughout the entirety of that show is really fun, and I think she's a cool character, so would love to have I think it's interesting to have a whole spin-off about her. And it's interesting that like the word spin-off is being used here, like for
Yeah.
the MCU now, because we're fully in the realm of television, and this is a spin-off of a TV show that was WandaVision. So it's cool.
Yeah, I think it's very neat. I think it's an interesting direction because this will be the second, potentially third, depending on if you believe the buzz about like a White Vision follow up. Potentially the second or third spinoff from WandaVision because there's this, maybe a White Vision project, and then the Jimmy Woo X-Files thing that is apparently being worked on. Like, bonkers that WandaVision spawned 3 projects, and all of them I think have an interesting hook to them because I really love Agatha, and I think she was a really great presence leading up to that reveal for her. And even in the end, like, I think as a villain, she still kind of played an interesting villain that wasn't the stereotypical I'm you but bad. Like, that's what she was, but she was also more charismatic than a lot of the other villains that are like hero but evil. So I think her leading a show could be great and could just flesh that character out even more and make her continue to go beyond the MCU trope that I think she's already working towards breaking as a villain.
Yeah, and I feel like the genre of dark comedy works for her. She is a villain after all. So yeah, this is pretty interesting. I feel like this is probably a few years away. Once we get into like spin-off territory, it's like, man, how will this like affect the MCU really? Like, does it even matter all that much? We're getting like the closest thing I can think of is, I guess, What If, but the Guardians of the Galaxy holiday special. Like, I'm sure that obviously that will connect to the MCU, but it won't have like really. I'm not sure how much ramifications it will actually have for the MCU, and this might be something similar. But yeah, we're really getting into, I guess, like the nitty gritty. Not that, I mean, I think have been in recent years, but we're really getting into like some random characters here and there that are getting like their own projects. So it's interesting.
Yeah, I think what they would do to avoid that, because we know Agatha was around during the Salem witch trials. I think they'll probably just put her in a different time period than modern day MCU to avoid any conflict. You know?
Yeah, that's definitely a possibility.
Like, I don't think they'd make a 17th century dark comedy. That would be a choice, and honestly, I'd be kind of into that. But they could make it take place in like the 40s or something, or the early, like the Roaring 20s. Make her just be a witch in that era. Like, that could be cool.
If they wanted to follow a similar model to WandaVision, which like each episode was in its own like TV era, they could do each episode being Agatha in a different like time period, and just trying to like live in that world and then just see how that progresses. That's a possibility.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So whenever this comes out, I'll be excited because I think she is a great get for the MCU, and I'm excited to see more.
Yeah, Catherine Hahn's awesome, so good for her.
Hell yeah. Well, why don't we move on to our first piece of media to discuss for the week? What If has ended, and this one's all about the finale, the Guardians of the Multiverse. Spoiler-free thoughts, Jack.
I don't care about the show. I've come to that conclusion. This episode kind of cemented that for me. I don't think this was a bad episode, and I don't think it's amongst the worst. It's probably somewhere in the middle. But seeing all of these characters we've collected along the way, I just don't care about what happens here. And again, like, this show hasn't lived up to the possibility of the concept of What If. And at the end of the day, it was it did explore characters in the multiverse in like different situations, but at the end of the day, they teamed them all up at the end, and it just sort of felt like a rehash of other team ups that we've seen throughout the MCU. So kind of bland. Didn't really like the show. I'm really not looking forward to season 2, like at all, unless it's like completely different and they just really double down on ideas and like create new concepts. But right now, I'm not so hot on What If. What about you?
Yeah. I thought the episode was solid. It wasn't, I think, a super intriguing concept for me, where even some of my least favorite episodes of What If, I think, have a cool concept, but they just have poor execution. This one is like a fine concept with solid execution, so I'm with you. It's kind of like middle of the road for me. But I think as a whole, yeah, What If is like, it's not what it could have been, and I think now, it really just feels a lot worse compared to something like a Star Wars Visions, because I know we have heard people talk about this. I know that in terms of our own conversations, we have figured What If is not necessarily adapting What If the same way the comics do. I don't have a familiarity with the What If comics because I haven't read any of them, but from all accounts, it seems like the comics using this brand are able to really dive deep on it, whatever twist or concept they have. And the concept is usually deeper than like, what if this one tiny little thing changed? It's usually, I think it was like, what if Punisher was Spider-Man is one of the what if pitches I'm aware of. So like, we've gotten some of that. Like, we got what if T'Challa was Star-Lord, and that's still a highlight for me from What If. But yeah, it hurts. I think this show has limitless potential, and it feels so limited. And I think at the end of the day, that's my biggest issue with it. Like, art style's fine. The takes on the characters, the performances, for the most part, are pretty good. It's fun. It's able to keep up that air of funness that the MCU is great about keeping consistent, but at the end of the day, I do think it just feels surprisingly limited for what the potential of the series is supposed to be.
Yeah, and like so many people have, and myself included, have compared it to Star Wars Visions because it's that show released around the same time, which is really interesting for a Star Wars anthology series to release at the same time, similar to like a MCU anthology series in a way, where there's supposed to be one-off episodes. And Visions absolutely kills it. I've seen the majority of them so far, and I love most of them, if not all of them. And What If, I've liked a few episodes a decent amount, but I wouldn't say I love anyone in particular. And as a whole, I just felt that What If is just kind of boring at the end of the day. Like, even from like the acting we've seen from some of the actors, like, it doesn't seem like they really gave it their all or were directed in a way that their performance suffered because of it. And it felt like an afterthought in a way. And it's really disappointing because this is the first like animated project from the MCU, and I think this was one of the more interesting concepts. Like, I think WandaVision's certainly up there, and this on paper sounded super interesting. And when they announced it, it sounded really cool, but it just did not end up being something. I don't think I'll ever go back and watch What If at the end of the day.
Yeah, like, I hope that they're aware of some of the pitfalls of this first season and take that into account when planning out and writing season 2. But like, animation takes a lot longer depending on a number of factors. So like, maybe What If and the style they use and the type of animation it is able to get produced faster than something like a Star Wars Visions, but maybe it's too. The point of that is maybe it's too late into production for them to drastically shift the type of stories they tell with What If for season 2.
Season 2 is coming out next year.
Yeah, so I don't know. I'll be there for season 2 just to like check out the pitches and hopefully see some improvement on the types of stories they're telling. But this was like pretty damning. A few weeks back, I think when Visions came out, somebody on my timeline was like, so I think the way they said it was like, it's very refreshing to see an anthology series that doesn't feel like it's made by a boardroom. And I was like, ooh, I don't think you're wrong, but ooh, like Visions does have that creative liberty and freedom in a lot of ways where it surprised me because like Star Wars usually is so strict about what can fly in their universe, but like even the episodes of Visions like Tatooine Rhapsody, which has a lot of familiar characters like Jabba the Hutt, Boba Fett, it didn't feel like the spectacle was the characters we know doing this specific thing. The spectacle was the stories they were telling, where like What If like feels kind of fan servicey, but it's not in a weird way. You know what I mean? Like it doesn't have that. It is being fan servicey. I think it's just not hitting for me because like Endgame I think has a lot of fan service in it, and that was something that rubbed off on me a little harsh when I first saw it, and I cooled off on that take, but like I think What If definitely goes for that, and it doesn't feel earned in a lot of ways, I guess.
Yeah, and I feel like I think the issue for What If is that they decided to base it like in the MCU we knew, and then on a like trajectory, like something changed, and then we follow it from there. I wish they were just like, hey, we're situated in this weird universe that is like completely different to the one we know, and it just so happens to feature our character we know that we're gonna follow. And like I wish they sort of went that route, but they got into the situation where they wanted to connect all of these episodes, which I think was probably the worst idea for this show. Like I think we were coming in expecting, and they kind of pitched it this way, for it to be completely like it could be connected to the MCU, I guess, but like it's just going to be fun stories. And the stories didn't even end up being all that fun at the at combined. So I don't know. It's unfortunate.
Yeah, and I mean it's wild too because like the whole point of the multiverse is that like literally whatever they would have done would have still technically existed within the MCU, right? Because like the multiverse exists, so Insomniac's Spider-Man is in the same multiverse as Robert Downey Jr. Iron Man, you know? So like I don't see why that would be a make or break for them. I think the issue I have with the way they tie it to the MCU is that some of the episodes are literally just, this is beat for beat the same movie, but it's in a 30-minute episode of a TV show, and the lead is slightly different than what you expect it to be, right? So like they could have kept the MCU tie-in, they could have kept the MCU actors, but I just wish it was like a genuinely different story. Like do some weird alt history for the Captain Carter episode where yeah, Captain Carter exists and Germany won, so she's a resistance fighter in this new age, like Wolfenstein style. Like do something like that. Like that is an interesting spin that wouldn't feel like Captain America won again, or Doctor Strange did get a little weird with it, but it was still, he went to a place to fix a thing, and then he went off the rails in the end. So the only difference is in the Doctor Strange movie, he went off the rails and he won because of it. So like I think my main thing is that it's tied to the stories we know already, and not like trying to tell a new original story with people we're familiar with. and I don't imagine that'll change in season 2.
Yeah, and that's what has me bummed out. Like I guess we can get into spoilers, but like the end credit of this, if you want to call it that,
Yeah.
like essentially tease up Steve surviving, and they show that. I'm like, dude, I do not care to follow this thread at all, and it just goes back like each episode I wish was just completely its own thing, and like I don't need to follow up to anything that's going on. Like what's great about Visions is that each episode was its own story, and it felt complete by the end of it. And every What If episode always ended on a cliffhanger, and then even in this episode they pulled them out of that cliffhanger. Like that's exactly where they pulled out of. So it's like, okay, I guess I would have wanted a complete story, but you chose to do a cliffhanger and you don't even follow up on it. It just feels very incomplete and kind of messy in a lot of ways. And now we're going to follow the thread of Steve being back in Peggy's universe. I just don't care.
Yeah, and I think genuinely I would care if the original episode for that universe was more interesting. Like, if the Captain Carter episode, and I'm not just trying to dog on this one, like, I feel this way about zombies also, like, if that wasn't literally just something we've seen before and it's just roles are reversed, if it was literally telling a brand new story with this new version of a character we're familiar with, not having her do the same thing we saw Steve do, and like, oh, Steve went in the ice in that one and he died in this one, but guess what? In both, he still came back. Like, it's just so samey, and that's why I feel like it's fan servicey, because it's just trying to like not even subvert expectations. It's just like, oh, hey, that thing that you thought was so important to this character didn't happen, but it did happen, but it happened in a little bit of a different way, and that's just not interesting to me.
Yeah, and the fact that the end of that episode, and I guess the beginning of this episode, was essentially the Winter Soldier, but Peggy Carter. Like, it's the same thing, just kind of different. Like,
yeah.
I'm thinking of, in this specific episode, like in the finale, they're jumping through all these different multiverses, and they look so different. Or maybe it was the previous episode, where like the Watcher and Ultron Vision are fighting. Mm-hmm. They're jumping through all these different multiverses that look completely different than anything we know. Like, why couldn't we just have the characters we know take place in those universes? This is like so squarely centered in the MCU, and just like each episode has something that changes and like makes the universe slightly different, and that's kind of boring. Like, I feel like they could have capitalized on just going completely crazy, and they didn't. It just makes for a really boring show, I think.
Yeah, and there are exceptions, right, to what we've been talking about from my perspective, at least. Like, the zombies episode, I would be interested in seeing a follow-up, or just a straight up, hey, we're making a Marvel Zombies series based off of that episode and the ideas we had there. Because there's a rumor going around, that, or a report, that there were plans in place to make a full series about T'Challa Star-Lord with Chadwick Boseman, and like it was in like some outline pre-scripting phases, and like I'd be down for that, because I think with those two specific ones, like I have my issues with What If Zombies as like an episode of an anthology where it just kind of just stops in the middle of its story. But T'Challa Star-Lord, I genuinely think, does the subversion well, and the familiar things aren't boring, to me at least. Like, their take on Thanos, their take on Nebula, watching T'Challa deal with his issues in history very differently than Peter Quill did, speaks a lot to the Peter Quill we know, and T'Challa as just a person and his views on things. So like, that's refreshing, and the reason I don't like the Captain Carter one is because the Captain Carter one is like, okay, Peggy's like the same ideals as Steve. It's just that it's the same ideals, the same character archetype, and the same actual narrative. So What If has potential. They gave me a few episodes this season that I did enjoy, that I would be interested in seeing follow-ups with, but those are the minority for what we got overall. So I'm just kind of let down, you know?
Yeah, I also think if they released this as just like in one day, or if they release season 2 in one day, that will like take the sting away from this. I think they wanted to drag it out because they were building to something that was completely disappointing in my opinion.
Yeah.
But maybe they think about that. They saw what they did with Visions. I know those episodes can be really short, so I guess that made sense. But like, I don't know. I feel like if they released this season in one day, we'd be like, I guess that was okay, and then move on. But the fact that we've been talking about this for the past X amount of weeks, and I feel like that's contributed to a lot of it, where like every Wednesday it's like, well, okay, I guess I gotta watch this again.
Like, no, that's exactly what it is. Every time it's Wednesday, I'm like, oh yeah.
I forget about it until it's like, oh right, yeah, forgot about this.
So why don't we rank this one? First, before we do that, I want to ask you, the Guardians of the Multiverse, that team, do you expect them to show up in the MCU?
I sincerely hope not. I hope like maybe one or two characters. I would like Agent Carter. I think, or Captain Carter? Captain Carter. That'd be interesting. Anyone else, though, I don't really care.
Yeah, I could see Captain Carter and Supreme Strange show up in Multiverse of Madness, just because I think Multiverse will have Doctor Strange talking to another Doctor Strange. I think that's just a feeling I have. But yeah, I think it's very clear that what you were talking about a lot of just how heavily this is tied to the MCU, I would be surprised if we never saw Captain Carter, or maybe they use the T'Challa Star-Lord as a way to throw a recast T'Challa in the mix for a multiverse thing, or bring back Killmonger or something. Like, I think there's a world where we see this team in live action in some capacity. So
I hope they forget about this. And I feel like that's entirely possible, because this whole like show takes place, it seems like it's very important to like the entire universe, and it's really not. Like, I don't think this will be referenced in live action. Like, I think this is entirely possible that they can just completely ignore the events of what happened here. I kind of hope they do.
We'll have to wait and see, Jack. Okay, I have our rankings. I'm gonna read through them all, and I want you to tell me if each episode was good or not.
Okay. That's a good call. Start from the bottom.
So, start from the bottom. Killmonger Tony is number 8.
Not good.
Not good. Number 7 is Party Thor.
Not good.
Number 6 is Captain Carter.
Decent episode.
Okay. Number 5 is Supreme Doctor Strange.
I would also say decent. I know you like this one.
Yeah. I don't like it that much, but I think it's solid.
Yeah.
Number 4 is Zombies.
I like this one. I know that's a lot of people don't like this one, but I think this is a good episode.
Yeah, my main issue with it is just that it should have been twice as long.
Oh, yeah,
100%. Number 3 is Fury and the Murder Mystery.
I think this is a good episode.
I agree. I think that's a really good one. Number 2 is Vigiltron.
Man, dude, I'm completely forgetting about this. This is the previous weeks. I liked that episode, especially with like the Nat and Clint stuff. I think that was probably the highlight of that episode.
I agree. Number 1 is T'Challa Star-Lord.
Yeah, this is the best one, clearly.
Yeah, retweet. Big fan of that one. Where would you slot this one in? Because I'm looking at this list right now. I think. Do you like it more than Captain Carter?
No.
No. Okay.
Well, like I was thinking, like hovering around the Doctor Strange episode.
I was gonna say it looks like it might slot nicely between Doctor Strange and Captain Carter.
Okay, that's a good call. I think that's a good call. Because like I would probably rather watch the Captain Carter episode, but at least this one is like not a carbon copy MCU story.
Yeah, it's at least trying to do something with that what if thing, you know?
Yeah.
So there you have it. 9th place, Killmonger Tony. 7th, Party Thor. Nope, that's 9th and 8th. 7th is Captain Carter. 6 is Guardians of the Multiverse. 5 is Doctor Strange. 4 is Zombies. 3 is Fury's Murder Mystery. 2 is Age of Ultron, and 1 is T'Challa Star-Lord.
Wow. Where does What If fit in your MCU ranking?
Oh, last.
Last? Yeah, I was gonna say this of the 29, including this one. I think at first I put it at like 26, but I would say like this would be like my second to last. I still don't want to watch
maybe
Hulk.
Above Hulk.
Yeah, I would say this is my second last for me.
Just because this is fun, and Hulk is just like it's Hulk.
Yep.
But yeah, definitely bottom 2. And also, I think you asked this last week. We never got that Gamora Thanos episode because apparently got pushed to season 2 for some reason. So
that's so dumb. We're gonna see that in season 2 and be like, of course, like here we go.
Yeah, very, very strange. We'll follow up when season 2 happens, but what if we didn't do it again?
Someone on my timeline, Kleinfeld of The Direct, had a really good tweet, and he said, what if was good?
That's a good one.
It's a great question.
What if we just stopped?
That's an even better question.
Yeah. Well, we've reached that time, Jack. Get your web shooters out. Or actually, no. You don't got web shooters right now. They're got
baked in, baby.
Web sacks. It is time for the one we've been waiting for, I think. Spider-Man in reviewed and ranked on here. This Excelsior program is now officially done with the Venom era because we did that first for release reasons. It is officially time to talk Sam Raimi's Spider-Man.
Thank God, dude. We've made it. I'm so happy.
So, kicking off, because this is new for both of us. I don't think either of us have ever talked about this specific movie together, and definitely not in a podcast format. So this is like brand new content.
Yeah.
I would like to hear your history with this movie before we get into the discussion of the rewatch.
Great way to start this. I think this is, the more I thought about it, this might be the most nostalgic movie for me in my life. I remember, this might be the first movie I saw in theaters. I specifically remember going to see it. And I remember a weird memory of seeing like the cigarette burn on the frame of the movie where they show the exterior of the wrestling match. Like I remember seeing that. Like, what is that weird dot in the corner of the screen? Damn. But yeah, I saw this when it came out, 2002, and I think this completely ignited my love for Spider-Man. I thought it was amazing, and as the years have gone on, obviously it hasn't aged as well as like my memory was thinking of, but I still think this is a really good origin story, and I just still love this movie to this day. So yeah, I feel like this, I can credit this particular movie for really starting my appreciation for the character. So love this one. What about you?
Yeah, so I'm in a similar boat. I think Spider-Man was introduced to me through probably one of the animated shows, and then of course the Neversoft PS1 game as well. And this movie completes the Triforce of my Spider-Man youth, because I didn't see this one in theaters, but I did. This was the first VHS that I ever owned. And because I feel old, for anybody listening who doesn't know what a VHS is, it's a movie that looks like a book that you put in a giant box to watch. It's very old. It's very,
You gotta
very old.
rewind it.
Yeah, manually the whole length of that goddamn film. You gotta just. Oh man. But yeah, I remember. I think I was with my sister. I was at a Walmart and it was there, and I think it was in like the $5 bin or something, and it was like, that's the first movie I ever bought. So much nostalgia for this movie. I think this might be the reason I love hero origin movies, because like Batman Begins is my favorite Nolan Batman. I really like a lot of the Marvel Studios origin movies for Ant-Man, Doctor Strange, Shang-Chi. So like, I think this is probably what started that, because prior to Spider-Man, I think the only other superhero movies I ever watched were like Batman and Robin and like the Adam West Batmans, and that's probably it. So nostalgic as hell for sure.
Yeah, I saw the Tim Burton Batman movies, which are campy, but like in a significantly more dark way than this movie is. And I think this is just, I feel like this movie and probably, I think maybe X-Men came out before this. I'm not too sure, but those two movies I think were pretty much directly responsible for the MCU existing. I feel like it is that more lighthearted superhero movie compared to the darker tones of Tim Burton's Batman movies, and like finding a much better balance than the Joel Schumacher Batman movies of being way too campy, where this movie is certainly very campy and very silly, but it has a great heart to it. And yeah, I feel like this is kind of like the building blocks of the modern MCU, modern superhero movies we're seeing today.
Absolutely. Well, why don't we get into the movie a little bit? I think, how should we do this? I think we should start overall.
Okay.
Because we're getting into this new era for our Spider-Man review series. I think we should do this for the first movie of each person. Overall, out the gate, what do you think of Tobey Maguire as Peter Parker and Spider-Man?
Oh, good call. I think Tobey Maguire in this movie nails Peter Parker in like a very awkward way. He's given a lot of really incredibly awkward dialogue, and his mannerisms are very cringy, but like in the best possible way. Like, I think people who haven't seen this movie would watch it and be like, dude, he's like such a cringe actor. But I feel like he nailed maybe like the 2002 version of like an awkward person. And that's sort of what Peter Parker was in a lot of the comic books. And this is very much like a comic book movie, and he sort of nails that persona. He's a little wooden, I think, as Spider-Man. He's not, like, he has quips here and there, but they're not like,
it's the delivery.
Yeah, like the delivery is a little dry, and like his performance as Peter sort of carries into Spider-Man a little bit. Like, he doesn't nail that balance quite well. I still think he's a good Spider-Man, but I think he's definitely a better Peter for sure.
I think, and listen, I love Tobey, and I'm nostalgic for these movies for sure. But like, I was watching this last night. It definitely, like, this came out in 2002, 1? Okay.
2002.
It feels like what a person in 2002 thought a nerd in the 60s was like. Like, that's kind of the vibe I get from some of this, and I have a statement. It hit me last night, and I could not shake it for the duration of the film. You gotta tell me if this is outlandish.
Let's hear it.
Tobey Maguire's Peter Parker has mad incel vibes.
Yeah, no, you're completely right. You are completely right.
Like, dude on a forum, I said she looked pretty and she didn't want to date me. Like, I was nonstop, like, out the gate. Like, the first time I saw him interact with Mary Jane, even just from, like, a look and, like, it just... The first line, too, it's like, the story begins the way all great ones do, with a girl.
Yeah.
It was like, oh my... I know it's of the time, I know it's super campy, but, like, that was just a thought I had that I could not shake for the entire movie.
I also think any character in this movie is like that. Harry is like that. Norman is like that. I think a lot of it comes down to the writing. But you're right, like, that is... Peter is the main character, and yeah, a lot of that brunt is brought on him. Like, man, a lot of the conversations with him and Mary Jane are just like, yeah, like, especially with him in the hospital, like telling Mary Jane that he spoke to Spider-Man about her, and then he goes off on this long speech that is incredibly creepy, and a normal person would be like, oh, okay, I'm going to leave. I don't really know you that well, and it's weird that you talk to this masked man like that. But she was like, oh, man, I can't believe you said that about me. And, like, that's how she falls in love with Peter, essentially. It's like, oh, yeah, it's not great. Not great.
Yeah, like, he's got, like, tip of the fedora, my lady vibes. And maybe that's why some of the toxic Spider-Man fans are big fans of this guy.
Yeah.
Also, you brought it up, so I'll say this, too. I think... I've always felt this way, but the chemistry between Peter and MJ is not there for me. Like, there were some elements where I was like, oh, that's like a sweet look they both gave each other, but like that's kind of where it stops for me.
No, you're totally right. I watched this like for the first time in a while, like freshman year of college, and I was like, oh man, I can't wait to dive back into this movie. And after a long break from seeing this movie, you start to like pick up things that's like, oh man, that I don't remember this movie being that awkward. I think a lot of the dialogue is very it's just not good, and that goes to the fact of what you're saying of their chemistry just feels like words on a paper in a lot of ways, and like you don't really get the emotions between the two characters, and especially by the end, like, I'm not sold that she's in love with Peter Parker. And it feels like they're written into situations where I guess they're supposed to feel like they're in love, but you don't feel that energy in the same way you do with relationships we'll see later on that I think are dealt with in a lot better way in the coming series. So, yeah, this movie doesn't handle that particularly well at all.
I have another statement I'd like to make, and I need to let me know if I'm once again out of pocket for this claim.
Let's hear it.
I think some of the dialogue between Peter and MJ, if not most of it, gives Anakin and Padme a run for its money.
Dude.
Like, I'm rewatching the prequels right now. I just watched Revenge of the Sith. Revenge of the Sith is like, honestly, I think the back and forth that those two have in Revenge of the Sith is better than this, but like, Attack of the Clones, dude, like, it's given me the same feelings and same thoughts. I think at least in Attack of the Clones, like, the facial acting, I buy some of the chemistry a little bit between them, and it doesn't feel as out of place because everybody talks like that, but like, yeah, it just a lot of their exchanges for me did not hit. And they never did, but specifically now, it's just like, yeah, we've had better Peter and girlfriend couples since.
Yeah. I'm glad you brought up the episode 2 comparison. I was listening to your and Mike's review on Jedi Knights about that. And so, like, I had that in my mind while I was watching this movie, and I was like, yeah, it is similar. Because, like, George Lucas treated the prequels like a Romeo and Juliet story in a lot of ways. Mm-hmm. And like the dialogue in that is Shakespearean in a way that is just not congruent to what's happening in Star Wars. And I think you get a little bit of that in Spider-Man, especially with the hospital scene that I was mentioning, where he's going on this long speech. It's like, no human being talks like this. This would be a giant red flag to any normal person.
I know, dude. Because
it's just
the thing is, when
that distracting, really.
When I'm with you, I forgot. Like, maybe I haven't seen the movie in a while because I watched it a couple years ago, for the first time in a long time. But yeah, when he was about to say something to her, I was like, oh, this is when he says like something smooth, and then it's gonna like make sense in the end. And then he goes off on that tangent. And it's like, dude, what? Like, you had a very easy moment to literally just say anything normal that would have sold that relationship, but no, he goes off on a soliloquy. Like, it's something. It's something, all right.
I found myself laughing a lot whenever the two of them would speak, which is not what you want to do. To write a convincing relationship between these two characters. So that was something.
Yeah, but as far as the rest of the movie goes, I'm good with it. I'm good with the writing and the comedy, and I just think the fact that Peter and MJ is such a focal point of this, it drags it down a bit for me. But I can excuse some of it because there's so much other relationships I really enjoy. Like, pretty much Norman's relationship with everybody in this, when he's interacting with like Harry or Peter or the board, like anything involving him and himself even, like, I really like the back and forth he's got and every other character has with him. But yeah, like a Peter and Aunt May, Uncle Ben is solid, and specifically with Uncle Ben, that still like hits me. That I don't know what it is. Maybe it's just because I saw it when I was young, but like this Peter and Uncle Ben dynamic and relationship, I think, is one of the most emotional connections I've ever had with like two characters on screen for a beginning origin thing in such a short amount of time.
Yeah, totally. I was thinking the same thing. I feel like that hasn't really been topped in terms of like Spider-Man projects.
Yeah.
I guess maybe with Iron Man and Peter, but like what you're saying, like the first one, that connection, I was weeping when I saw this last night. But that still hits, and I feel like this movie is a really great. I think despite like the flaws of the Mary Jane and Peter relationship, I think this is like still a really great origin story, and I think we've just been like oversaturated with a lot of those stories that we're kind of bored with them now. But I still think this is a really great story to set up Spider-Man, and a lot of people in our generation think of that origin story from this movie, and I think it was so impactful. And it like still to this day, I feel like it still does a really good job of telling the story of how Peter Parker became Spider-Man, even if it is disjointed in some places and the dialogue between Mary Jane and Peter is really bad. Great origin story.
Yeah, and I think another, because I'm one of those people that when I think of Spider-Man's origin, I think of the first 30 minutes of this movie. A lot of that is because I have such an emotional tie to this specific Uncle Ben. Something about the actor, dude. He just like, he's got that grandfatherly thing going for him, and when he's laying on the concrete weeping and his delivery and Toby's bouncing off of him, like it just hits. And the immediate chase afterwards of going for the killer, that is like the moment I think of most often when people are discussing Spider-Man's origins, because it just hit for that time for me. Like, obviously I don't think that's the end all be all of takes on it, but it is very iconic because of our generation, like you said.
Yeah. And something else about this movie being an origin story that I absolutely adore about it is showing how the first thing Peter does with his powers is something to improve his own self and like to manipulate them in a way for self-gain rather than for just being good. I feel like a lot of superhero stories just pit the hero or pit the superhero just as a hero just because they have to be. Whereas this story shows that Peter tried to use his powers to get Mary Jane, like to get a car to impress Mary Jane. He was not out to do good until he realized he needed to because of his uncle's words that he eventually took note of. But yeah, I love how this movie spotlights that, where it's like, yeah, Peter Parker was not a good dude inherently at first. He really had to reflect on that, and I think this movie does a good job at showing that.
Well, maybe Sam Raimi can do it again, because when you were saying all that stuff, I was thinking of one Dr. Stephen Strange. He just hasn't had that moment of reflection yet, so
I hope so. That'd be cool.
Yeah, I mean, I think he'll carry a lot of what is iconic about these movies with him into that one, the way like James Gunn carries a lot of his consistent tone throughout a lot of his films with Guardians. Like, I think we'll feel some Spider-Man in the second Doctor Strange film because of Sam Raimi. Another thing I really love about this movie, just kind of going off of the Sam Raimi thing and the origin too, like, I don't think there's a single other superhero movie or superhero origin movie where I enjoy the visualization of the superpowers more, especially on an introduction, because just sort of like the way it's sort of a freak thing for Peter, and then we get to see like the metamorphosis of it. Like, it's a lot of his horror roots and like his body horror sort of thing with Evil Dead, of like the super close up on the hair on the fingers, and him trying to figure out how the wall climbing works, and then the web shooters and spider sense, and it all starts with the glasses, right? So like I think just with the way it's shot, I think it's very creative and just very charming as a way to show that your hero has powers, right? Because Iron Man does the test tape thing. That's fun. That's neat. But like literally doing weird camera tricks with a blur and a fake mirror and stuff to like try and get the glasses effect going, like I love that. And some of the super close-ups with tilt shift going on, like I think it's a great way to illustrate this change of Peter and how all the powers work. And we get to see it, like, its process tangibly as Peter's figuring it out. And I feel like other hero movies just don't really do that much.
Yeah. And it's a good progression, too, because he spends, like, that whole first day, like, realizing each individual power. So, like, you were saying, like, at first his body has changed, and he can see better. And then he realizes his hands are sticky, and then he's shooting webs he's not realizing he could do. He caught the tray of food that he actually did, like Tobey Maguire. They took like hundreds of takes, and there was like glue on the food, but it was like impossible to do, and they actually did it. So that was cool. And then you get him fighting Flash, like using spider sense and spider strength, and it's just fun. And then eventually you get him climbing up the walls and like jumping across roofs and trying to figure out how to activate his webs. I think is still hilarious. Yeah. Like, go web, go, Shazam, tally ho. I think that is one of the funniest lines. Tally ho. Like, the cadence that he uses to say that is so funny.
Yeah, all that stuff is great, and just very fun, like you said. It's weird though when early in the movie there is some of those like overlays of like the car and stuff. It's like, yeah. I don't think I'd think it was weird if they kept doing stuff like that, but they do it like twice in the first act and never again. Like, yeah, it's very weird.
It's the car, and then Peter looking at the camera like in his Spider-Man suit, and then pulling down the mask over the newspapers. That's hilarious.
Yeah. Yeah, very, very, very weird. Um, but in terms of all the things they try to do with fun camera things and editing tricks, there's so many in here that you're bound to have some misses.
Yeah, totally.
I'm just glad that all the power ones worked very well.
Yeah, I think those are good.
Yeah.
And going off of the Sam Raimi conversation, I feel like this is a good balance of like what you were saying, his horror elements, but specifically like everything that's going on with Green Goblin. I like how that is like essentially a horror movie, and then it's also a really good balance of like a very comedic movie at the same time. Like you actually like get jump scares with
Like a lot of them too.
yeah, there's a decent amount of jump scares, and at the same time there's like some like purposely funny dialogue, not like accidentally funny dialogue, in funny situations that we'll get as well. I think this movie strikes that balance pretty well.
Yeah, dude. When I was younger, there were some things that really freaked me out with this. Obviously, there were the jump scares, and then I don't know what it was, but for some reason, terrifying. Maybe it's like some weird suppressed Catholic stuff in me, but like when Aunt May is saying the whatever prayer she's saying, and then he shows up, and then the house is on fire, she's there in flames, and he's like, "Finish it!" And she's finishing the fucking prayer. Like that's terrifying for a child.
Yeah, that was pretty scary. The skeletons of the board members, like before they crumble to dust,
that's so
that
good, yeah.
always scared me.
Yeah, and I think the one that got me the most when I was younger, and it's still I remembered it was coming this time, but like when Harry goes to pick up Norman off the floor, right, and he's recalling what happened last night. He's like, "Dad, what happened? Are you okay?" He's like, "Harry, I was," and it's just like very, very quiet, and then it's like a very hard cut to the close up of the white eyes like seizuring Willem Dafoe, and the sharp music cue. It's like, holy shit, this happens a lot in this movie. Okay.
Yeah, there's a ton of jump scares. I guess that was the thing at the time.
Yeah.
Like it feels very 2002, but definitely got me.
Absolutely. What do you think of Green Goblin in this? Because I know some people think it's a bit too much, or some people think he's the weaker one compared to other Spider-Man Sam Raimi villains, but I've always had a huge fondness for this. Maybe it's because I'm most nostalgic for this movie of the trilogy, but like I really, really love Green Goblin, and specifically Willem Dafoe's take on the character.
I think they were really close to having an especially great villain. I still think he is good, and I like the idea of him being affected by whatever affected him to make him the Green Goblin, and him having the sort of split personality of Norman and Goblin. I think that's a really great concept. I wish they sort of developed his motivations more, where he offers Spider-Man to like be at his side, but I'm like, what is he trying to accomplish, like after the board members are dead? Like,
Yeah.
I'm not really sure.
Yeah, I had the same thought last night. I was like, so why does he want to not have Spider-Man? Like, he doesn't want to get caught after he killed them all, but like, he's not a detective. He's not going to figure out what it was. And that also surprised me too. Like last night when they were in the whatever the abandoned building is after the bridge scene, like, and he took the mask off, I was like, oh yeah, Peter never knew it was Norman. Like, he never found that out. So maybe it was just like some obsessive thing that he was just going crazy because of the serum. But I'm with you. I wish they gave him a little bit more to chew on. Like, maybe he had a second plan after the board was done. Like, maybe he's like, now I can run for mayor or something. Like,
yeah, like that's what I'm saying. Like, if they were like really close, because the concept of him having like the split personality, him like going crazy and trying to fight that, I think is really interesting. The imagery of the mask on the chair,
it's so good.
I think I had a toy set of that at one point or another, and I thought that was really cool. Just the mask on the chair was a really cool imagery. So I thought, like, on paper he was a really great villain. Is just at a certain point he kind of accomplishes all he needs to do, and then
Yeah.
is just kind of there in the movie. Like, I'm not really sure what he was really up to. And we'll get into more compelling characters that have arcs throughout the movie, and his kind of just ends at a certain point, and he's just kind of deranged for the rest of the movie. So kind of I feel like they kind of dropped the ball at a certain point in this movie.
Like I feel like it would have been nice if because he kills the boar like halfway through the movie almost.
Yeah.
So I think it would have been interesting to maybe explore him from more of a Joker perspective of like the goblin side starts taking over more and he does just want chaos. Like that could have been really cool, but no, it was just a hang up with this dude in spandex who's like, oh, this kid, we got to do something about this kid.
Yeah, that was pretty much it. Like, he gets that grudge after he's defeated, and that's kind of his motivation, which is pretty loose, in my opinion.
Yeah. I will say one last thing for Goblin. While I agree with everything we've just said, I still think the performance is like maybe one of my favorite superhero villain things ever, because Willem Dafoe is just like the way he carries himself and the way he plays both roles is just so electric to me, and just specifically when he's talking to himself, and like I love that long take of him going towards the mirror and he's like bouncing between both. Like you can see like the camera doesn't hide it super well, but like he's just doing both roles and he's like flipping the switch just like that as he's walking towards the camera or the mirror, and it's just so impressive. And I just love that so much, because I don't think, again, I've ever seen any other villain in a comic book movie do a performance like that. So nostalgic, yes, but also just gripping, I think.
And I also think it fits really well with like the tone of the movie. It's like very much a cheesy and campy movie, and I think probably purposefully. Like it's based very much so on like the older like 2000s movies were very much so based on the comics, which were campy and cheesy. And I think his performance is very much in line with the goal of the movie and the tone of that the movie established. But yeah, even on a base level, I feel like he has a great performance, and he's an incredible actor. And even in this, you can tell like even though he has this like ridiculous costume on and his character might be a little out there by the end of it, he's still like putting on a really great performance and has just some amazing lines too. You've spun your last web, Spider-Man. Godspeed, Spider-Man is probably my favorite.
Yeah, I love that one too. Is he the best villain we've seen so far?
Yeah. Of Venom 1, Venom 2, and Spider-Man?
Yes.
I actually don't even think it's close. I think he's the best so far. Even though I think there's a lot he leaves a lot to be desired, I still think he's probably the best we've seen so far.
If you had to rank them so far, what would you do them? Would it be Goblin and then Woody because we remembered it, and then Riot?
Mm-hmm. Pretty much.
Okay. I made a note because I think it'd be fun to rank them along with the Spider-Men.
Okay.
Once we're all done. Okay. So do you have is there one specific scene you really love in the movie? Because I know we talked a lot about the beginning, but when they're actually dealing with Spider-Man and Peter and dealing with the montage of like all the people just reacting to Spider-Man in the city, like that's pretty great too. So like once we like move past the origin, what stands out to you most about this movie?
Oh, in a particular scene?
Yeah. Or just like a sequence or an interaction or anything that like you really think is a highlight of the second half of the movie.
In terms of the second half of the movie, honestly, I like the end bridge battle. I like just seeing like the interactions between Spider-Man and Mary Jane in like this moment of desperation. the he's not gonna make it, he's gonna make it scene, I think is cool. I think it is definitely like a little silly of all the New Yorkers.
Yeah.
You mess with one of us, you mess with all of us.
Love
Which
it, though.
the more I think about it, I think this movie, because this came out in 2002, like was probably affected by 9/11 in that way. Like I don't know if that scene exists because, or if 9/11 didn't happen. Like it's very much centered around like New Yorkers uniting. So I think that's probably because of that. This movie like marketed the Twin Towers when it was like doing its rounds in like 2001. So, and they had to get rid of that for the final product. So I think that is probably it. But yeah, I do like that scene a lot. Spider-Man being the hero, being able to save both people at the same time. So yeah, I think in the second half it's probably that. In the first, I love everything that happens after the wrestling scene until Peter meets up with Aunt May again. I think that's probably my favorite sequence of the movie.
Sure, yeah, I can get with that. Love Thanksgiving too. Just that entire set piece is just fantastic because that's after he like saves the baby from the burning building. So like, I just feel like the movie is so great at making Spider-Man feel like Spider-Man without even showing that much. Because like outside of his confrontations with like the big dramatic moments, he's just doing Spider-Man shit for a lot of the movie, right? Like he's stopping robberies, he's going from place to place, just doing stuff kind of in a montage, but there are moments where we get to breathe with it, like the fire. And you were talking about great dialogue. My favorite line in this movie is when he comes in and he's like, "Oh, I had to beat off an old woman with a stick to get these cranberries."
Yeah, dude, that's the best line in this movie. Like,
yeah, it's so good.
Of course, this awkward nerd would try to be funny.
Yeah, nobody laughs either.
No. Yeah, like why would you joke about causing violence to this poor old woman in front of your
when your aunt is right there?
So yeah, perfect line.
Yeah, and just obviously that's hilarious, but just the tension of just like Norman realizing everything and then like Peter coming into the apartment and hiding, like that entire element is great and is why I think so many early superhero movies love doing the secret identity thing, because you get scenes like that where you're in a tight spot and you gotta hide it, you know. So I like that a lot.
Yeah, good tension throughout.
Hell yeah. Is there anything we haven't talked about with Spider-Man so far that you wanted or you were burning to talk about on your rewatch?
Yes. Can we talk about how amazing this music is?
Oh, yeah.
This is Danny Elfman who does it, I believe.
Oh, I thought you were talking about Chad Kroeger.
Well, all right, we can talk about both because, yes, this is a product of its time, and Nickelback does Hero as the main like track for this, which is great. I'll be honest.
It's good, yeah.
That's good stuff. But man, like the Danny Elfman score is so iconic, and I feel like there's a lot of projects that are like completely boosted because of the music, like Star Wars, for example. I think this is one of those. Like, this would be a good movie with like subpar music. This is a great movie because of a lot of the points in this movie just hitting because of the incredible score.
Yeah, I agree. I think, especially lately, Danny Elfman can be very hit or miss for me, but this has always been a highlight for him in my eyes. Like, obviously the Batman score is, like the Tim Burton Batman one is like very, very iconic also, but genuinely, I think his Spider-Man theme is like pretty close to being as iconic as the Batman theme he wrote.
Yeah,
so
it's beautiful,
and it's not even just the theme. Like you're saying, like throughout the whole thing, the music is pretty great.
Yep.
And yeah, of course.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, go for it.
Just when we get the credits and then it goes to Nickelback, it's just perfect. It's great.
It's so good, dude. It genuinely is a good song, I think.
No, it really is. Yeah. Have you ever seen the music video? Because I remember on the VHS tape that played after the credits finished.
Yeah, they were on like a rooftop, right?
Yeah.
Good stuff.
Mm-hmm. But go ahead.
there's a Superman reference in this movie.
Yeah.
That always baffled me. Like, not even. I guess as a kid, I didn't like understand that they were a part of different like universes, but I remember this being in the trailer too. I remember Aunt May being, "You're not Superman, you know," and it's like, what? Can't believe we're referencing other heroes like that. That was the closest thing that I realized of like two different heroes like interacting, and it was just a random piece of dialogue.
Yeah, that's something that always stuck with me too. It's very fun, it's cute, it's very much of a, oh, this is a superhero movie and there's not a lot of those, you know, so it's like we gotta make a reference like that, but I like it, and I do, like I said, I like all the interactions Peter has with Ant-Man, Uncle Ben. I don't care for Harry very much.
Nah.
We didn't really talk about Harry at all, but he's kind of really non-existent in this movie.
He's also just kind of a one-note character, and also just a bad friend. Like,
yeah,
I have very little sympathy for his character. He gets, I think, even worse in the next movie, which is not good. But yeah, in this movie, I just don't like whenever Harry shows up. I'm not like, oh sweet, another scene with Harry. It's just like, oh, he's kind of annoying.
Yeah, I'm not a fan of Harry. But I am a fan of this movie because I gave it a whopping 4 stars on Letterboxd.
I saw that. Yeah, that's great. I gave this 3.5. Maybe just being like slightly more. I don't even know the word. Like, just there was a lot of this movie that I was like, you know what? Of course, it doesn't age well. I think what you were saying is really interesting about like. I feel like the through line of this movie gets lost at some point, and at a certain point, it is a lot of just going from one scene to the next, and it doesn't feel like there's a finish line in sight, and the third act just kind of happens all of a sudden, which is something I kind of noticed for the first time this rewatch. But overall, I still love this movie. It is really silly, and it is fun to laugh at in a lot of instances, but there's an incredible amount of heart to this movie that still hits to this day, and I still think it is a really great origin story.
Yeah, I agree. I have my issues with it. I think it didn't age the best in a lot of ways. I don't love the relationship between Peter and MJ. I think MJ is not written very well. When it comes to the fantastical characters, all 2 of them, they got a good back and forth. Peter and his family I like a lot. And like you said, there's a lot of heart. I think there is some nostalgia at play. But the cheesiness, like I think it has a lot of fun with it. And very early on, it makes you adjust to what type of movie it's going to be. Like, I don't think, with maybe the exception of that line he says to MJ, I don't think there was anything in the movie tonally that I was surprised by after the beginning of the film. Like, as soon as it opens up with that goddamn quote about Peter narrating it and then running on the bus, getting tripped and like all that stuff, like nothing beyond that was ever cheesier or campier than that. Like, it prepared me very early on. So it's at the very least consistent. So I'm not going to knock it for being campy or cheesy, because out the gate, that's what it is. Hard on the sleeve. So
it's a capital. It is like, it's a Sam Raimi movie. Like in every aspect. Like, it's very much, I feel like he had a lot of control over this one. And it seems like the progression from 1 to 2 to 3, like that control sort of slips as Sony probably got more involved and wanted to make more money from these movies. But this one I feel like is the most Sam Raimi Spider-Man movie because of that camp. But I like it. I like it a lot.
Yeah. I'll say this too. Historically, I haven't watched the trilogy or even Spider-Man 2 in full in probably like at least a decade. But when I was younger, this was always my favorite out of all three.
Yeah, that's fair. I think this one, even more so than 2, and especially 3, is like very nostalgic, and there's a lot to like about this one. I feel.
Yeah, it's very cozy.
Yeah, it is totally.
Yeah, so I'm curious if 2 hits me next week in a way that shakes my lifelong feelings about this movie. But next week we will be returning with Spider-Man 2. But before we wrap up, Jack, we do have to rank this bad boy. So as it stands, the individual and group ranking, I believe, is the same. Second place, we have Venom 2018. First place, we have Venom Let There Be Carnage.
Where are you putting
What
this
is your
one?
personal? Okay. I may be bold, but I'm thinking it would fit very nicely between the title of the list and first place.
Oh, God, thank God, dude. I was genuinely nervous when we got to this
Good.
point. That I know you like Venom. I really thought you were gonna fight for Venom, one of the Venom movies, to be above this Spider-Man movie.
I like Venom, but I'm not a fool.
That's good. That's good.
Well, maybe I am because I like Venom, but like, Venom will have its time to beat out another Spider-Man movie.
Yeah, yeah. One Spider-Man movie, I think, at least one. Maybe at most.
Maybe
one.
2.
I don't know.
Maybe 2.
What 2? Definitely 1. We know what we're thinking. But yeah, I think as of now, this is I think this is the number 1 spot.
Oh yeah. So as it stands, third place is Venom 2018. Second place is Venom Let There Be Carnage, and first place is Sam Raimi's Spider-Man. Hell yeah.
I like the list so far.
I do too, and I think you will probably continue liking it for a little bit longer.
I think there are going to be a couple movies in here that will be an interesting conversation.
I'll straight up, I'll tell you right now, I think Amazing Spider-Man 1 is going to be a very interesting conversation.
I agree. Yeah. I think you and I might align more on that movie than we probably think we do.
Okay. Well, I'm looking forward to it. That's just a couple weeks away. So
yeah, I watched both of those movies within the past couple of years, and didn't understand the hate that some of them got.
Sure, yeah. I saw the end of the first Amazing movie on TV at some point during the quarantine pandemic within the last 15, 16 months, and I was like, oh. I'm a fan, but having not seen the actual full movie for a long time and just seeing the ending, I was like,
Yeah.
So, excited for the rewatch, though.
Definitely.
But until then, Jack, where can the Agents of Excelsior find you?
Yeah, you can follow me on social media at Fascinated Jack. What about you, Christian?
You can follow me on Twitter, Twitch, and TikTok at Shun2D2, as well as youtube.com/joyclicks with mostly daily video uploads going up there. Alongside every other show that you want to find on JoyClicks, you can find it in a playlist. But if you want the audio version of Excelsior, you can look up Excelsior or JoyClicks or Marvel's Avengers podcast on your favorite podcast service like Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, Google Play, whatever you have. You can check us out on those services. Rating and reviewing, if you can, on said service would be very appreciated because it helps us out a ton, helps the show out a ton, lets us find more people. And we got to spread the word. We got to start getting the take going that Tobey and Spider-Man 1 is a bit of an incel. I think that's a popular take that might catch some fire, you know? I think that has potential.
That's a good one. I think that's a good meme template going forward.
I almost tweeted it last night, but I wanted to save it to get your reaction. So
you're like right on the money. I think you're completely correct.
I'm glad. I'm glad I saved it because now I feel confident putting that tweet out in the world.
I think you should.
I think I might. So, if you want the show's Twitter, though, which does not have that tweet on it, you can check out Excelsior JC on Twitter for our full Spider-Man review schedule and anything relevant to new episodes of the show. And we always tweet out when new episodes go live. So, if you're not subscribed, you should. But if you want to turn on any notifications or follow the Twitter account, you'll see every episode every Saturday. But that is going to do it. Until next week with Spider-Man 2, Excelsior, it's pizza time.
Excelsior, it's pizza time.